Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Decaturish Download Podcast, a weekly podcast from Decaturish.com. I am your host, editor, and founder, Dan Wisenhunt. I took last week off. I wanted to celebrate my son's birthday and his request that I not work for a night. So happy birthday, son. I took a night off for you. Our guest today, our former DeKalb County Commissioner and podcaster, Steve Bradshaw. Steve, how you doing?
Wonderful. Honored to be here. Thank you.
And two fine local journalists. We got Mr. King Williams. King, how are you this evening?
I'm doing wonderful, you guys. I'm doing wonderful.
And the one and the only George Chidi. George, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Nobody's shooting at me.
So we're all grateful. We're all praying that continues. If you're watching us tonight, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Please put your questions in the comments. We'll be glad to answer them there. Tonight's episode is brought to us by the DeKalb County Tax Commissioner. I'll tell you more about what they've got going on in a minute. So I am not as up on national news as I am local news, because local news is kind of my thing. And I'm told that there's a government shutdown going on right now that's affecting Homeland Security and TSA screening. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, mainly because I feel like we've been in a shutdown for the last 2 years in one form or another. But Steve, bring us up to speed. What's going on with this?
Sure. Thank you. So the upshot is there are certain elements of the Department of Homeland Security that are not currently being funded. And that includes TSA agents. And consequently, in airports all around the country, because TSA agents aren't being paid to show up to do the work that they're charged with doing, you've got anywhere from 20% to 40% of the TSA agents as no-shows. They're just not showing up. And, I can't really find much fault with that. I would want to get paid for the work I'm doing, and they're not being paid. This consequently is producing very, very long lines at the airports, and it's making passengers, the flying public, pretty disgruntled across the board. And just as a brief personal anecdote, my wife actually flew out of Hartsfield-Jackson on Monday. She was flying international, so she went through the international terminal, which wasn't as bad, but for whatever reason, her flight was delayed by 4 hours.
Wow.
As a corollary, she and I have some travel coming up together in the next few weeks, and I don't mind telling you, I'm pretty worried about what we're going to discover when we get to the airport if this isn't resolved. Now,
George, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt. George, weigh in on this, because I know you follow these national issues a lot. What is this shutdown fight about? Because I can't separate one shutdown fight from another at this point.
Gotcha. So I am essentially on loan from Atlanta to the Guardian for the time being, reporting as their Southern correspondent. And as it happens, I was flying from Miami to Atlanta last Thursday. The essence of the argument is Democrats in the Senate no longer are willing to allow ICE to act unconstitutionally. They're the only mechanism they have is to prevent a funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security to pass without some restrictions on ICE behaving unconstitutionally. So they've essentially asked the administration to ensure that ICE agents, get a warrant before kicking somebody's door in, and stop snatching people off the street without a warrant, and stop racially profiling people, and don't wear masks, and all of the other things that have people in the streets. And the administration is not willing to agree to that, so we're shut down. And I don't see this getting resolved anytime soon. Like, I think we've had a fundamental impasse here. The fact that the Homeland Security chief has been fired, and she was fired, I don't think changes much, because the fellow that they've nominated, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, is not giving any indications that he's going to do anything differently.
King, what is the local impact of these shutdowns? You're sort of our ear to the ground on this sort of thing. What are you hearing?
Right now, Atlanta at Hartsfield has one of the worst call-outs in the nation. We're averaging right around like a third of all employees, not just TSA, are just not coming in each and every day now. So that is going to keep impacting things. The biggest right now is in Houston. Around 50% of their employees are just not showing up as a result of this. And so for Atlanta, who has the World Cup coming up in about 2.5 months, like, this is something that you actually consider, like, how do we actually handle this when we have an influx of people coming from overseas for the games? In addition to just like after school, the end of the school year coming up really shortly, and spring break for most of the college students starting this week.
Well, in that context, we have some pretty important elections coming up, and it's going to start with the partisan primaries here in Georgia, which are in May 19th. Don't want to get that wrong. George, what races are you following in the primaries this year? I know I have a few.
So, like, personally, I'm watching the governor's race, obviously, for a lot of reasons, but I'm also very interested in who the Senate candidate for the Republicans is ultimately going to be. I don't think that's resolved yet. I think Mike Collins is likely to win. I'm waiting for this deluge of outside money to just sort of land on us like it does every 2 years when there's a Senate race, because Republicans believe this is the most flippable seat they've got in, this is the most vulnerable Democratic Senate seat in the country, and they're going to put everything into it that they can. And I'm just sort of holding my breath, waiting for the storm.
King, what about you?
Like George, I think everyone's looking at the governor's race. I think Ossoff is maybe the safest, and I know that's a more controversial opinion. That team has really been in high gear really since 2024, right after the election. I actually saw in October that team getting together. I know we saw the leaked letter to the AJC shortly after the loss in 2024, but that team seems like they're ready for the big time. I don't think this is going to be close, and I know some people right now believe it so. I actually don't think this is going to be close at all. I think what they have is going to be really going strong for them. The thing I'm looking for the most, though, right now is the Democratic side for governor. I actually do think this year might be the first time in maybe almost 30 years that the Democrats have a real chance to winning the governorship. I do think it relies on who it falls to. I know Keisha Lance Bottoms right now is the most named candidate. She keeps showing that, but I actually think if Jason Estevez can figure out a way to make him just appealing to just normies, I think he probably takes it out the water. I do think, though, Jeff Duncan is a real challenge, and he could also be a real winner in that race. But I do think, in case of both of those, both Estevez and Duncan, they got to really figure out what their strategy is to get the normal Democratic voter and the non-consistent Democratic voter to come out. But I do think both of those guys could actually win. I'm not high on Keisha Lance Bottoms. I know that she's the favorite for a certain class of people, but I think, like kind of what we saw Jasmine Crockett, if you're not having a strong ground game and you don't have a really strong game related to normal people, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose pretty badly despite having a really high national profile.
Steve?
Yeah, so I've been pretty keyed in on the governor's race in both the Republican and Democratic primaries based on some recent polling that I've seen. Former Mayor Bottoms has got a pretty substantial lead over the rest of the field. In the average of polls I've seen, Jeff Duncan is second, but running a distant second. And then it falls out, in single digits between Michael Thurman and Jason Estevez, and then on down the line. I will say I've had the chance to spend some time with Senator Estevez. Interviewed him on my podcast recently. Very impressive, very in command of the facts. I think he could be a very formidable candidate in a general election if he can get through this primary process. On the Republican side, the bomb went off when Rick Jackson entered the race and poured all of his personal funds into doing that. And the question is, in my mind, whether or not he has been any way behind that carpet bombing ad campaign against Burt Jones before he announced. I don't know, but it certainly softened the battlefield, so to speak. And in the recent polling I've seen in that race, they're running neck and neck. It depends on which poll it is. Jackson's up, Burt Jones is up by a few points. They're both in the 20s, and then it drops off a cliff after that. Raffensperger is, maybe 9%, and Chris Carr is 5%, and it falls off after that. But I did have the opportunity to attend both the Democratic candidate forum a few weeks ago and a Republican forum a couple weeks after that. Both were very interesting. I think, all the candidates kind of made their cases, but the Donnybrook between Jones and Jackson on the Republican side will be very interesting. Now, just one more thing. I think if the Republicans nominate either one of those guys, to pick up on something that King said a moment ago, I think we as Democrats, and I'm a former elected Democrat, will have a real shot at taking the governorship this year.
The Keisha Lance Bottom things mystifies me. I'm sorry, George. Go ahead.
Well, no, first, you're right. Mystifies me too. What were you going to say?
It just mystifies me. I mean, she was a mayor of Atlanta for like one term, and it wasn't smooth sailing that whole time. Now, a lot of that wasn't her fault. There was COVID and this and that going on. So I get that, but I just didn't think and then to hear that she's doing so well in the polling, again, I have no personal beef with her at all. I guess I'm not really clear on where this groundswell of support is coming from. And she's just really well networked, got a good ground game. I don't know enough to render a judgment on that.
I have thoughts, but King Williams looks like he wants to jump on.
I was going to say, you should go first because I have thoughts too.
Look, I think some of this, I think it's like this. One, massive name recognition. And two, I don't think the electorate is completely tuned in yet. And three, she is not being attacked. Like the other candidates, for whatever reason, have decided that they're going to play nice with each other. Like with the exception of Lester Jackson attacking Jason Estevez, nobody's really opening up on anybody else. And except for Jeff Duncan, everybody's attacking Jeff Duncan. I think that's part of what's going on. She's getting a free pass, even though, when you drill down to it, I don't think that the average Atlanta voter is going to vote for her. No, she's getting a bunch of folks who live from outside of the city, but I don't think she wins the city of Atlanta right now.
King.
I agree with everything that George says. I think important too for Keisha Lance Bottoms is that she is not just the biggest name in terms of she's kind of making fetch happen in the sense of the people who they're polling right now aren't going to be the actual voters. I can say this now because we've seen this constantly happen in which the person who initially leads gets a lot of name recognition. They get a lot of clout. They get a lot of buzz going into it. But more importantly, the average, like I said, the core voter, and I'm going to stick to that again, the core voter of who a Democrat is in Georgia. But also there's this other thing that Keisha is going to have to worry about, which is in 2026, is there are people who remember how she responded in 2020. There's a large activist base who are going to get activated once this kind of figures out as to who the nominee is. And I guarantee you she's not going to be able to come through that because they're going to remember that she was the mayor who called the National Guard in during 2020. She was also the mayor who eventually allowed for Cop City to be developed. And those people haven't been activated yet. And that is the one thing not even Jeff Duncan can really go against. No, they're not going to necessarily sink her campaign, but they're going to make her campaign really difficult to manage. And that is going to be one of those shots that she just has no response to. The other part with Keisha Lance Bottoms, candidacy, and I can't stress this enough, is for far too long, a lot of national candidates in Georgia, or candidates like herself, are trying to play to a national base. It feels as if this is a stepping stone to something else. It's something that I have seen the Ossoff campaign kind of retool over the last year or so, which is a lot of people have put him on a short list for maybe a 2028 position, but his team has been really emphasizing that, no, we are in Atlanta, be at every event, knock on every door, kiss every hand, shake every baby. And that's something that's not happening with the Keisha Lance Bottoms campaign.
I want to go out of left field. Nobody's talked about Vince Dooley. Is Vince Dooley still in this thing?
I mean, is Tennessee in it? Is Tennessee in anything?
Derek Dooley. Are you being facetious?
No, it's Derek Dooley. I'm sorry. It's his son. Okay.
Of course, Alabama, you would do that. Okay.
Yeah, no, Derek Dooley. Is he still running? He's still running.
I saw him at a Trump rally in Rome about a month ago.
The Derek Dooley thing, all Ossoff's people have to do if he gets the nomination is just dig up every story for when he was a coach at Tennessee. Because that guy's tenure was this epic fail. So my favorite story, I love this Derek Dooley story. So Derek Dooley is known as being kind of a weird motivator, put it that way. And Tennessee's mascot is the Smokey, the dog. And he had like a little stool that he would sit on the sidelines, and he got up at SEC Media Days one time and said, the SEC isn't going to kick Tennessee around again, and then they lost every SEC game that year. But my favorite is he walks into the locker room, team meeting. He calls a team meeting, and he puts down a statue of a dog, of Smokey, a ceramic statue, and he says, "Feed the orange dog," and then he walks out. doesn't say anything, doesn't provide any other context. I love that story so much, and I'm like, I'm wanting him to be the Republican nominee for all the wrong reasons.
Okay,
he is not.
He is not going to be, you don't think?
Well, that race I haven't followed as closely. I think Mr. Collins probably has the inside scoop on that, but in the macro sense, looking at the whole chessboard, the way it's lining up, I think Senator Ossoff is a very, very strong candidate. I think his candidacy is going to help Democrats up and down the ballot. And, he presents himself well. I've watched him a lot lately. He settled into that role. He's got a great ground game. I get a fundraising email from him, seems like every other day. So I know he's flush with cash. He's getting to avoid a bruising primary fight. He's armed for bear, and he's going to be a very, very strong candidate and a very strong leader at the top of the Democratic ticket.
When I found out Brian wasn't running, when I found out Kemp wasn't running and Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't running, I was like, well, it's his then. Well, they essentially cleared the path for him because those are the only two candidates that I could see that potentially, which is remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable that a Democrat could do that in Georgia.
There's one other race I'd like to talk about.
All right.
I wish people were talking about it a little more. David Scott has drawn 7 primary challengers.
Wow.
And it is because this thing that we don't say out loud, David Scott is going senile. I don't think David Scott, and frankly, I think a lot of people who look at David Scott no longer believe he is fit for office. Like that is and it's underreported because it seems ageist and it seems ableist. But they've been running stories. I wrote a story for years now, saying that he's not he's checking out in the middle of meetings. His aides are essentially running the office. The fact that he's had very strong constituent services over the years has kind of carried him, but he's not making public appearances anymore. He doesn't just talk to the media. And so blood to the water, it's an 8-way primary, and I don't think he's going to win it. He is there's some familiar names running against him, including Emmanuel Jones of DeKalb County, former state senator, type 1 each, is a candidate to succeed him as is Everton Blair, who's a Democratic Party stalwart, and former state rep Jasmine Clark. They are all challenging. Actually, I think Clark hasn't. I don't think she's had to resign her seat yet. So, she still may. I don't want to but Dr. Clark is running. So is Everton Blair. So is Emmanuel Jones, and a bunch of other people I don't recognize. And I think we should be paying more attention to that race.
Indeed. Let's pause real quick and hear from our friends at the DeKalb County Tax Commissioner. DeKalb County Homeowners Tax Commissioner Nicole Golden is reminding you to check your homestead exemption before the April 1st deadline. Do you have a basic exemption? Easily file online or in person now until April 1st. It's a one-time application process. Special exemptions are also available for eligible seniors, disabled residents, and disabled veterans. You must meet all eligibility requirements to receive an exemption. Apply online or make an appointment to check your status at decabtax.org or call 404-298-4000. All right, King Williams has an excellent column coming out in Decaturish. I just love this column so much. King, walk us through it. It's about teen takeover. Give us the high level.
All right, so teen takeovers, if for those of you who have children or grandchildren, you kind of over the last couple of weeks, it's the most recent epidemic of parents being afraid of youth taking over, right? We've been through this. I've been through this. Everyone on this panel has been through this at some point. The youth are taking over. They're destroying whatever. In reality, what these are is for Gen Z in particular, a generation that's been really defined by their connection to a screen, from a phone to a tablet to a video game to something. This is their first real effort to actually meet up. The problem with the teen takeovers is that in many cases, these are several thousands of kids showing up at places, mostly rotating around the area. Now, it did not start in Atlanta. I know people may think that because Atlanta has a lot. It actually started in Florida first with a lot of bored teens in Florida who would start these teen takeovers through TikTok and Discord and other private social messaging apps, where at first you would have several hundred kids show up at a movie theater, or they show up this, and it got bigger and bigger. So Atlanta started doing the same thing. And so the biggest one incident was several thousand kids showed up at the Battery over President's Day weekend last month in February, of which there were about 15 kids who actually were seen doing things they should have been. So again, out of 3,000 kids or so who showed up to the Battery, mostly just being loud and obnoxious teenagers, 15 of them were actually doing something they shouldn't have been doing. Those 15 in particular, some they had weapons on them, some fighting. They were actually causing a mess. The interesting thing that's also important about the teen takeovers is if you look at the videos that are posted online, for the most part, if you actually watch a lot of the kids who posted for them, most of the kids were trying to regulate those kids who were actually acting up at the place. But what makes the 5 o'clock news, the 15 kids or so who get into a fight, and it seems as if teen takeovers are taking over Metro Atlanta. In reality, these are a bored generation of children who want to get out and meet on their own terms. And so it's not going to be something as simple as we're going to meet at the library on a Saturday night, right? But they're moving at places that adults are also in part because this is something I wrote about in my column. We spent a little time with it, which is there aren't places for teenagers. I wrote in several cases, in several columns of Decaturish now, we have a lack of third spaces in DeKalb County, which are places that are not school, not work, not religious institution, not a military post, places that you're not required to be at. And so as a result, for the last 30 or so years, we've been developing with the goal of bringing in new business or new retail, but not necessarily realizing that those children who live in those spaces grow up. And so teen takeovers are a result of that. So when you see the kids in Metro Atlanta popping up at Decatur Square or Avalon or the Battery, they're mostly, or Atlantic Station is like the bigger one they all meet up at. They're mostly meeting up at the same place that adults would meet up at because there's place for them to go. And so I think we're in a really interesting point in which the teen takeovers will probably keep coming because they keep happening every weekend, which lets you know these, again, teenagers, they pick it up. They usually have Saturday night for the most part. They don't say when or where. But the fact that we're having law enforcement now arresting juveniles for mostly doing juvenile things, I think is a really step backwards. And we're kind of missing the forest from the trees here.
George, Steve, y'all got thoughts on that?
So, this is a phenomenon I wasn't really aware of. I did read your article, your column, very, very insightful. Just curious as to, who are the organizers? How does one of these team takeovers get started?
Yeah, it's not as if it's one centralized figure. It's usually on something like a Discord, like a private Discord. The kids don't really, they kind of use Reddit, but Discord's like a private messaging app. So things like that. And it could just be like in the case of the Cabo, and these are just kids who lived in Cabo who were bored. So like in the case of DeKalb, these are kids in DeKalb who were bored.
Okay.
And so they just kind of upvote or downvote locations. So it's not one individual. It's just a bunch of kids making upvote or downvote to where they want to be at and what time.
Understood. And if you don't mind my asking, because this is for my edification, when they gather, what are they doing? Are they just socializing with each other, or what's the vibe at a team takeover?
For the most part, it's mostly kids just meeting up. And oftentimes, this is, again, we know this is where I'm in. It's for many of these boys, it's their first time actually meeting girls in the real world. So they're talking to girls for the first time. They're trying to get numbers. A lot of this hasn't changed, right? And again, the knuckleheads will show up, right? And so one thing I will say, the kids, for the most, have been trying to get the knuckleheads to stop showing up to these places. But for most of them, they're just being loud, trying to find each other's socials, meeting girls for the first time. They're not doing anything crazy, which is like the thing that's really unfortunate because the knuckleheads keep ruining the party.
The thing for me is, like, it is not illegal to be a person in a place, like, if you're not committing some other crime. Like, the First Amendment protects the right of people to peaceably assemble. Like, it's really basic. Like, the problem is when you've got, like, so a few years ago, there was a terrible shooting in, like, on Edgewood Avenue. Like, 10 people got shot. I think 2 people died. Like, because there are a bunch of folks doing like street burnouts in the middle of the street. Like, and I think that the distinction between let's all go to the Battery, which is legal and probably revenue generating, is different from let's take over Spaghetti Junction so that we can do street racing. Like, I think there's a conflation between the street racing stuff and just a takeover. Yeah. I think it's perfectly fine if you get 1,000 teenagers who all decide we're going to go to Atlantic Station and chill, or be rowdy but not criminal. Like, I think that's probably fine, except there have been deadly fights at Atlantic Station, and so Atlantic Station, which is this quasi-public private space where the folks who run Atlantic Station can kick you out for basically no reason at all. It goes to this thing about not having a space that you're allowed to be in because we've closed off all of the public places. The DeKalb broke up a takeover at a park up the street on Rockbridge late last year. They made arrests on it, curfew stuff. Penny ante, whatever. And from time to time, as you're driving along in DeKalb at night on a Friday or a Saturday, you might see like 50 cruisers like off on Memorial Drive or something like that, just hanging out. And it's because they got wind of a takeover. Like, only in this case, like, they shouldn't be doing that unless they know it's going to be street racing. Street racing, I think, is another animal because people do get killed.
Yeah, it's dangerous. Like,
very dangerous.
But I think we conflate the two.
Yeah, I think that the kids in particular, they kind of have gotten, because in the case of like what you're saying, right? And there was a shooting last year at Atlantic Station with a very small teenage boy who also got killed for in a similar situation.
Yeah.
I think that that's something I wish we kind of did as a local media, kind of like separate those two things, which is, again, several thousand kids are showing up. Six Flags doesn't open up till April, right? So there isn't really a place for them to be at right now. And so just separating, like, okay, the knuckleheads are coming. Let's focus on the knuckleheads disrupting this event versus like demonizing all the kids who really are just meeting like their first real taste of like being social with each other.
Tony Cade over at Challenges Games and Comics, friend of the show there at North Lake Mall. Tony chimes in, says it would be nice if kids could start hanging out at the malls in DeKalb County, and there should be activities for them. I will say Decaturish Inc. is distributed at North Lake Mall, and there are a lot of walkers at that mall. And every time I go to do this is how small we are. I got to do the rack deliveries for ink at the malls. And every time I go, those ink editions are picked up. So people are walking and doing their, drinking their coffee or whatever. But yes, I agree with you, Tony. I for sure think there should be more usage of our malls. I'm sure the people who have stores there think that as well. This is the Decaturish Download Show. We air right here every Thursday on the Facebooks and the YouTube channel, and we even have it on our LinkedIn page. Our podcast is available the next day. on the App and Media Podcast Network. Just search Decaturish Download wherever you get your podcasts. And our friends here are accomplished professionals and have their own things going on. And I want to give them a minute just to tell you where you can find their work. We'll start with Steve. Where can people find out about you and what you're doing these days?
Yes, thanks, Dan, and thanks to my colleagues here online. It's been a pleasure seeing you again, George, and a pleasure meeting you, Mr. Williams. Or may I call you King? I hope that's acceptable.
It's fine.
Only if you
Mr.
call
Williams is fine.
Mr. Williams? Okay, that's fine. So I recently launched a podcast called Serve Somebody with Steve and Emily. I'm doing it with a very good friend of mine, Miss Emily Hallavy, who's a very bright person. We've been friends for a long time, celebrated with each other, our wins, commiserated our losses, and so far it's going very well. I would define our objective as having a civil political discourse with very smart and knowledgeable people. As of now, our episodes drop every Tuesday, and they're available via Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube. And people are welcome to visit our website at www.servesomebodypodcast.com. And thank you for the opportunity to pitch it.
Thank you, Steve. We appreciate you. King, where can people find your work, sir?
Well, obviously in Decaturish, where I write, which is the world's number one.
Besides us, yeah.
Of course. I have a Substack, which is IamKingWilliams@substack.com. And come next week, I will have a YouTube channel as well called The Breakdown with King Williams, which would be really fun. So I hope you guys visit that as well.
George.
I also have a Substack called the Atlanta Objective, but I'm spending more time, admittedly, writing for The Guardian as their democracy reporter in the Southeast. I am on TikTok now. Do you hear the derision in my voice?
No.
My 50-year-old self doing TikToks. Look at King Williams' face. Look at his face. Look at his face. Like
part of me is dying hearing this, George.
No, you should be there. That's what the youth are. They're on
TikTok. He's right. You should
I just saw some stuff. Like 30% of Americans are getting their news from YouTube and TikTok. And so I'm going to throw some stuff up on TikTok from time to time. Just search for George Chidi. You'll find it. But
we could do a teen takeover of George's house at Pine Lake.
They would love it, actually. They would love it.
Like, everybody, thank you so much.
And some nails.
Yeah, they could fix your fence, right?
Yeah.
This is the Decaturish Download. We will see you right here next Thursday here on Facebook and YouTube. Until then, we hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, everybody. Oh, and before I forget, this Sunday we will have a forum, first of our Decaturish forums, for the District 4 school board race. So check that out this Sunday at 3 p.m. right here on the Decaturish Download channel on Facebook and YouTube. Now we're ending. Have a great weekend, everybody.